does for me is interesting because it gives me, first of all, when people ask me, what are you? I can now say, well, I'm 53% European and 47% African. So I have an exact amount to tell them now. Because when I was younger, they would always ask me, well, are you black? Are you white? Whatever. And so now I can tell them exactly what I am when asked that question, which is not as often as when I was a kid, obviously, but it still happens occasionally. But for me, it's very interesting because of what my particular mix is. I don't know just how I came out. As I've mentioned before, when I was born, I had blonde hair, I had blue eyes, and I was very pale. And people, my father thought my mother had an affair instead of my mother's family, and thought that I was not black at all, and I was only white. Until as I got older, they started to see that I was. But because of how I look now, I don't look black. I don't look white. I just look like something in between. People think I'm a Middle Eastern, or they think I'm Hispanic. It's usually one of those two. So sometimes they think I'm from Spain. Sometimes they think I'm like Mexican or Puerto Rican or Cuban or one of those, usually Cuban or something. Or and other times they think I'm like Persian or something, even though I don't have the Persian nose and any of that stuff. So it's just the way people perceive me to be. And I've talked about that a lot on my show, as well as perception and how people perceive you, and how that's kind of everything in this country when it comes to race and that sort of thing. But it isn't important really to most people unless you're on the receiving end of it. When you're consistently perceived as being something other than what you are, it is kind of a mind fuck. Because, I have a certain pride in who and what I am. I have a great deal of pride on my father's side for coming from people who survived slavery. They had to have survived for me to be here. And the people who endured and were hardworking and were able to endure one of the biggest atrocities of the human existence, in our human existence, right along the lines with the Jews in Germany being exterminated. So, except that the Jews in Germany had to endure that for maybe 4 years, which was bad, and they were exterminated, and it was horrible, very horrible. But the slaves had to endure hundreds of years of that. So my point is, it gives me great pride to have come from people like that, because they are very strong. It also gives me great pride to come from the people I come from on my mother's side, because as a result of the genealogy I've done, I've traced back my family tree, like I said, to 1000 something AD. And I was going to tell you all the people that I'm related to, whatever. And this is all very fascinating to me, because I have one of my best friends, and then my husband as well. I've done my best friend did his own tree, and then my husband, I did his tree for him as well, and he's helped me do a little bit of it as well, fill in the blanks or whatever. And I traced back my husband's family, back to when they came to America and before or whatever. So I know exactly where his family comes from and where they came. Well, his family doesn't have one person of fame or anybody that was of any kind of global significance that you would know about in his family tree. So is the case with my best friend. He doesn't have anybody of any pertinence or significance in his either. For me, however, it was really fascinating and surprising to find out all the famous people that I'm related to directly and as cousins and third cousins and whatever through my family tree. And it came out to be a number of people, and so I'm going to go through some of them with you, and I'll tell you how I'm related to them. Now, my mom's side, my direct great-grandparents, there were so many of my direct great-grandparents. It's crazy how many of them were. I mean, I'm talking generations back. I'm not talking recent. Okay, I'm talking like hundreds of years back. But those people still, I carry their blood. I just carry their DNA in me. Whatever. These are direct descendants, ancestors of mine, not people who I was kind of related to as a cousin or whatever. These are directly related to these people. And so I was doing my. Hold on, let me find this. I was doing my my family tree, and let me see, where is it? Here he is, right here. I'm gonna find my 13th great grandfather. It starts before him, really. Let me start before him. That would be Jean. Okay, Jean. then Guy, then Jean again, then Valerin. Hold on. Okay, I'm trying to go back all the way. So it actually goes back to 1220, and then it goes to 1165, and then 1140, and then 1111, 1085. And then, so, yeah. So I'm all the way back to 1085. So I have 24 great-grandfathers who are directly related to me, all the way back to Walarin I of Luxembourg. And he was a huge, huge ancestor to have, and so were his children, and so were his children's children, and his children's children, and so on and so forth. Because they were dukes and they were kings and all that stuff. Luxembourg, if you don't know, as I mentioned earlier, is a very tiny country in Europe, and it's not a country you hear much about. It's sort of like Switzerland or whatever. You know, you hear about Switzerland for money and that sort of thing. Luxembourg is a really beautiful place, and but it's a very tiny country. It's the smallest country, and it's got a long history of royalty and all that bullshit, you know, from that time period. And so Walarin I of Limburg and Luxembourg, whatever, he had Henry Walarin, Duke of Lower Luxembourg, and then he had Henry II, Duke of Luxembourg, and then he had so on and so forth. So it goes on Henry, because it goes on forth, right? Well, it goes all the way back down, and all these people are like dukes and kings and queens and shit like that. And we get all the way, and these people were the ones who were like the founders, or not the founders, but the ones that kind of started the country of Luxembourg, I guess you could say. And these were my grandparents. My 20th great-grandparents, 23rd, 24th great-grandparents were the ones that were doing this. And I see their crests, I see their pictures, well, not their pictures, but their inscriptions that, you know, their what's it called? Their bronze likenesses, you know, that they didn't have pictures then. And then I see Henry Luxembourg, my 19th great-grandfather, who has his in stained glass in a Belgium church, which I found through research. I found my family crest from them as well, from Valerin de Luxembourg, my 18th great-grandfather. I'm going down, I'm getting to something here. I keep going down. And these people were very, very active in France as well. They were marrying people from France, and so I have a lot of French people in my family, whatever, French royalty, aristocrats, going down the line. And then I get to, there's Guy. I'm trying to get to Jacquetta, because she's the interesting one. Where is she? She's my... Okay, then I get to Pierre de Luxembourg, 1390 to 1433. He is my 14th great-grandfather, or my 13th great-grandfather, sorry. And he was born in Italy. I remember I have that 1% Italian blood, but that's where it comes from his line, and died in France. But he was a cardinal. Now, a cardinal is one step below a pope, and the cardinal is the one that chooses the pope. And he was a cardinal in Italy. So he was very, very well-known, famous. There's pictures of him. I found a picture of the guy, a painting, I should say, not a picture. And anyway, he had his daughter. The interesting thing here is he had a daughter by the name of Jacquetta de Luxembourg. Now, Jacquetta de Luxembourg is my 12th great-grandmother. Directly related, okay, right up the line, straight down the line. There's a picture of her, and she's got red hair, and she's really pale, whatever. Now, there was actually a movie and a show called The White Queen. I think it was called The White Queen. The White Queen, I think, yeah. And that movie was about Jacquetta's daughter and whom she married. Jacquetta's daughter married King James III. I think it was King James III. Her daughter was my aunt, married, her name was Elizabeth Woodville. She married, where is he? Edward IV, King of England. His last name was Plantagenet, but that was his name, Edward IV. So I'm related by marriage to Edward IV, King of England, and Elizabeth. Anyway, so Jacquetta, my point is, Jacquetta herself, though, came from that very illustrious family I mentioned earlier from Luxembourg. Now, she had her daughter, like I said, but Jacquetta, she had all these kids, and my grandmother, my 11th great-grandmother, Jacquetta's my 13th great-grandmother. Let me go back and make sure that's right, or 12th or something. Hold on. Okay, Jacquetta's my 12th great-grandmother. She had a daughter besides Elizabeth by the name of Catherine Woodville. Now, Catherine is my 11th great-grandmother, and she married Jasper Tudor. Jasper Tudor. Does Tudor sound familiar to you? By the way, Catherine as well has a stained glass picture of her and her husband and an English abbey that's still there. I have a picture of that as well. It's really fascinating. So when I go back to England one day, I'm going to look at it and say, that's my lovely great-grandmother. Anyway, she married Jasper Tudor. Tudor, does that sound familiar to you? Yes, the Tudors. So her husband, this is my grandmother, her husband and she were they were related to Henry VIII and all those people, and Elizabeth II and Queen Elizabeth. So Queen Elizabeth is my second cousin, or my third cousin, and Henry VIII is my second cousin. So anyway, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. And so I'm just telling you, that's just the English side of things mostly, and the French and the Luxembourg people. So all these people I'm related to. And then looking closer to my family after that, like after my 11th great-grandfather and all that stuff, we looked at Francis Strother was his name. He was my 6th great-grandfather who lived in Virginia. He actually served in the Revolutionary War. No, his son did. His son, my 5th great-grandfather, served in the Revolutionary War and helped. He fought on the American side, obviously, and fought in that war. So I now can apply to be a son of the American Revolution or whatever it's called if I wanted to, which I don't care about, but I could if I wanted to. And then it goes on and on and on. My point is, it sounds like I'm bragging or whatever, but my point is that I have all these illustrious people in my family. So having found all these people over these years I'm related to directly, that are just like, my grandfather, my grandmother, my whatever, and back and back and back, these people, it gives you a great sense of pride to have these people's blood running through your veins, to have these people that you actually are related to who's, because when I was younger, if I'd known these things when I was younger, I wouldn't have felt as inferior as I did as people tried to make me when I was really like in middle school or whatever. I didn't feel that way in high school so much, but in middle school and really little, if I'd known where I come from, what kind of stock I come from, the kind of royalty and the kind of great things these people have accomplished. And there's many more stories in here I could tell you, but I won't bore you with. But I would have felt so much more, I would have had a stiffer back and walked a little higher and a little more proud if I'd known where I came from. The same goes for my dad's side. His side alone had military people falling in the military before blacks were even allowed to be in the military, like all the time. They just needed them because they needed them for the war effort. So World War I, World War II, I had 2 grandfathers on that side who fought in those wars, and so I had people in those wars. I had one who fought in the Civil War as a black regiment or whatever. So I have a long history to be proud of on that side as well, and not to mention all the slavery, the things that the people went through. So I find that ancestry and DNA and these types of things can really make you feel and understand where you come from. And some people think it's unimportant, but I disagree because of the reasons I've mentioned to you so far. It really does illustrate where you come from. As I mentioned to you earlier, everybody who came before you, you yourself carry the genetic DNA and the cellular memory of those people. That's why you are who you are. That's why you like the things you like, not just personality by environment, but personality through genetics. My whole family, and this, I don't know how this is going to sound. I hope it doesn't sound as bad as it sounds in my head right now, but my mom's side of the family has always had a little air about them, and I have always been told I have an air about me. And it's not something, we're all very down to earth people. We're not haughty. We're not, snooty. We're not uppity or whatever you want to call it. We're very down to earth people. However, they always have been seen and deemed to have somewhat of an air about them, especially the women in my family. Even the ones who make no money and work at Walmart or whatever, the ones who don't have anything, still have a bit of an air about them. And the reason I think that is because of where these people came from, and where we came from genetically. And I think that cellular memory gets carried down. And the same thing goes on my dad's side. The strong people who could endure anything and endured all these horrific existences in slavery and being enslaved and having their freedom taken away and being second-class citizens for all these hundreds of years in this country. Having that type of cellular memory for me, and I think that gives me my sense of strength and my sense of my attitude towards, fuck you or whatever. I really think, and part of that's obviously, as I said earlier, environmental. But it is also, I think, genetic. And so that's why I find it fascinating to find out where you come from. So I was going to tell you how you can find out where you come from and give you a few tips on some things if you're interested in finding out. First of all, I advise you to join Ancestry.com. They're an awesome website. It's an incredible website because you really